This is the Build Your Path podcast, where we explore how people get into their careers in the built environment.
Today's guest is Paul Say. Paul has over 15 years experience in the industry and is a senior project manager at Shapiro and Duncan.
Today's episode of the podcast is brought to you by Shapiro and Duncan. Build the lifestyle you deserve. Welcome on into the Build Your Path podcast, hosted by myself, Matthew Pine. I am with my guest today.
I'll say Shapiro and Duncan, project manager. The most interesting thing I've done in my career is working on the Inova Women's and Children Hospital in Fairfax, Virginia.
Well, welcome to the show, Paul. I'm glad to have you.
Pleasure to be here.
So maybe you could walk through with our listeners, how you got your start in your career, maybe what pathway did you follow to get where you wanted to be?
Sure. Man, where do I even start? So I guess another interesting thing about me is I wasn't born here in the States. Family immigrated here back in 1996. I was about 10 years old when I came to the States. And when we first came to the States, we actually came here in Maryland.
Mm-hmm.
I was 10 years old, and we stayed in like the Silver Spring area.
Okay.
Which I'm still kind of around that area now. I'm currently in Gaithersburg, but which is still all part of Montgomery County. So when I first came to the States, obviously English was kind of a difficult thing to learn as being a second language.
Mm-hmm.
So it kind of all started there. I went through the normal school system in Montgomery County, and I was never that great of a student. And I had always struggled with getting good grades, getting my homework completed, and doing well on tests. And I was always considered a disaster child in my family, to give you a little bit of a, insight on my family. But I specifically remember towards the end of my high school career, my junior year, I guess, the last bit of junior year, all the other people in my class and my friends, everybody was just getting ready for college to some degree. They were working on the drill, like their SATs, college applications, and just the whole nine yards. Eventually, I got into a realization that I really didn't have a plan beyond high school. Mm-hmm. And I was spending so much time having a good time in high school, like skipping class and hanging out with friends at the strip malls and whatnot. I just didn't really think anything past high school. So I was kind of in this weird mode of, uncharted territory in my brain. And I was like, well, what do I do? So the only thing I thought I could do was one of my friends was like, why don't you just go talk to like a guidance counselor? Maybe they can help you or something. And that's exactly what I did. So I went to talk to my guidance counselor at Rockville High School. Mm-hmm. God bless her soul, Ms. Crawford. I still remember her name. And she told me about this trade school that acted as like a secondary school, like a technical that was part of the high school curriculum. So I was very intrigued, and I couldn't say no. I was like, well, this is great. This sounds like something I could do aside from applying to different colleges and just ultimately getting rejected. Mm-hmm. I went after it, not knowing a thing about construction or what I was getting into. The program she had recommended me to get into was HVAC. And at the time, all I knew was it had something to do with air conditioning, anything more. So I went into this program, which worked as like I mentioned, a half-day program. So I would start at my home school doing the first part of the day and ultimately go to the secondary school each day. And there were like busing services in line. So like there was never like a transportation issue. So as I reached the end of my high school career, I received a letter from Shapiro and Duncan. Mm-hmm. And kind of shocking to me. I didn't think I would get a letter like that. And I opened it up, and it was an offer for a job as a HVAC apprentice. That was 2004, so it was roughly 16 years ago now. And I really couldn't say no to that either, because I was like, well, this is a great opportunity, because essentially somebody's reached out to me, asking me to, work for them. And I didn't think that would ever happen. I thought after high school, I was going to go out and probably struggle to find a job and maybe end up in a community college somewhere to work towards some degree that I may or may not use ever. So I took that opportunity, and as my friends all prepare their summer prior to their college career, I went to work 2 weeks after graduating high school. And then I started my apprenticeship program towards September of 2004, which was like a night program. So I worked, 40 or, our regular hours throughout the day, and attended school twice a week for my apprenticeship program. Did 4 years of that and received my journeyman's license in the state of Maryland, and eventually started running some smaller projects for special projects here at Shapiro and Duncan. And I stayed in the field in total about 7 years, and I received a phone call from my boss at the time, Don Spindler, and he told me, he said, "Hey, there's an opportunity here in the office. They're looking for assistant project manager." And I had always told Don that I was interested in management to some degree, but I just didn't really have the background for it. I certainly didn't have the education for it. So I applied for the job, and they somehow accepted me as I was, and got me into the office. After about a year of doing system project management, I started as a full-fledged PM, project manager in the construction department, which is actually where I still am today. I'm a project manager in the construction department. And that's pretty much my whole story. Like I basically worked my way up from a helper / apprentice to like a foreman to assistant project manager to a full project manager.
Yeah, so you mentioned like Shapiro and Duncan made a huge impact in your life when you were in high school. Did you have a mentor coming up through the construction industry to really help you along?
Yeah, I have had quite a few mentors. I have been very fortunate and blessed in that regard. I mean, I'm going to mention a few names here, and people are probably going to be mad at me for not. But when I first started in the industry, there was a gentleman that I worked directly under. His name was Kenny Moeller, who is actually our HR director's husband. They actually met at work. He was a big mentor. He's basically the foundation of my education out in the field. He taught a lot of what I know today. And he started me off on the right foot. Our supervisor at the time, who still works here at Shapiro and Duncan, Christopher Ott, he's another good mentor of mine. He was kind of like a father figure for both me and Kenny. He was really good. And as I headed into the office, there were other mentors, folks like Bob Barrett, Ron Chazen, Ron Churchy, last but not least, Sheldon Shapiro. They were all different mentors, and they all taught me different things. Bob was my direct report when I went into the office. He taught me, a lot of the people skills that I possess now. He taught me how important it was to build relationships. And Ron Chazen and Ron Churchy are both just extraordinary when it comes to organization. They showed me how important it is. Something as simple as you might think is, I don't know, an overachiever type thing, but just filing your emails, correctly is important. Just trying to refer back to it at a later date, and the filing structure that we have. And Sheldon Shapiro, he was definitely a mentor. He had always showed me that, there are always different perspectives to everything. And hardship doesn't always mean just struggle. Hardship, there's always good results that come from hardship. Should make an ordinary person achieve extraordinary things later on. I think that's it. It's just like a hurdle you get through, and you become stronger.
What do you see coming down the pike, or maybe it's already here, but the most pressing issues or challenges that our industry faces?
So our industry has quite a few issues. The one that I take to heart the most is the lack of qualified tradesmen. And I problems already here. And I know that a lot of different groups and organizations are trying to correct that and trying to, tell kids that are coming out of high school, coming out of even college to, reconsider their career choices and look into their trades because, honestly, there's always been this weird stigma about working in the trades as a blue collar person.
Yep.
And we as a society just need to be able to get away from that because if, we can't have everybody be lawyers and dentists and doctors and all the different various office jobs. Those jobs are great. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that, we don't need those people, but we also need a strong workforce, in the construction field and the service fields. And I think that's a struggle that we are facing now and will be facing in the coming years.
So what do you, since you lived through it, what do you see as more of the benefits of going right into like an apprenticeship versus college?
There's a few. The first benefit is a financial benefit. That being able to go through an apprenticeship program and not incur a student loan is a huge plus to anyone, especially living in this area, like just living in the Montgomery County area. If you had a student loan that you had to pay off upon graduation and get yourself into some sort of housing, I mean, it's next to impossible. There's just really no way to do it. And I feel that applies across the board in any city you live in. Honestly, it doesn't have to be Montgomery County; it could be anywhere. So I think that's certainly one benefit. I think there are some skill sets that you learn as a call it blue collar person or a construction person learn that you may not be able to get out, in an office setting. I think there's a different type of bonding you get with, people that are relying on you to hold a piece of pipe while you solder it up. That type of relationship and bonding you don't quite get in the office.
On a little bit of a lighter note, what would you say the coolest or the most unique thing you've ever done in your position?
So the coolest thing that I feel that I've done is, and I'm probably a little biased on this, like some of my coworkers, listening to this podcast will probably laugh and or make fun of me, but I think on the Nova Women's and Children's Hospital has been one of the coolest experience for me in my career, and there's a couple of reasons for that. At the time, the Nova Women's and Children's Hospital was the biggest project that Shapiro and Duncan had ever had. Now, obviously, that's changed since then. We've taken on projects since the 2011 timeframe. That project was also one of the first national ABC awards that Shapiro and Duncan had ever gotten, and also that project was done on time within budget, unlike some of these other ones that we've been on. So overall, it was just it was a big success to me.
What would you tell our audience? Like, what brings you joy to your work? What gets you up in the morning to go to work with joy?
The people I work with at Shapiro and Duncan makes me very happy. Each day I get to interact with them, and we all understand each other. We all obviously have different personalities, but we're all very accommodating to one another. And to me, working here at Shapiro, you're not just a small, not just a number. You're part of the team. You're part of the family, if you will. And that's what makes me happy, every day coming to work, and also solving problems. Honestly, the one of the big parts of being a project manager is being able to resolve issues and understanding and getting through conflicts. And that's a big piece of what I am in general.
Yep. So are you passionate working with young people, would you say? I think I saw you in a YouTube video from Shapiro and Duncan, maybe, presenting in front of a hearing, and you had mentioned like NCCER. Can you talk about what that means?
Sure. So NCCER, it stands for National Center of Construction, Education, and Research. And this whole topic, the NCCER, started way back in like the 1996 timeframe. And we also touched on it when I was going to school. When I was going through high school, they were kind of establishing a lot of the curriculums and whatnot for it. I think it provides all kinds of benefits to the construction industry. It basically standardizes curriculums and certifications across the board for a lot of different trades. It also helps, basically dial everybody in, put everybody on the same page as, what's needed for these individuals to do certain jobs. And I believe my understanding is they also help, help recruit younger people to get into these specific trades. So I think their existence is very important.
If a young person came up to you and asked what a PM does or a project manager, and how they can do the same job, what pathway they need to follow, what would you tell them?
I would tell them there's a million ways to skin this cat. And honestly, you could, there's two main paths you can go down. You could, you could follow a similar path that I went through, where you start as a field worker or an apprentice, and eventually work your way up to become a project manager. That's one way. There is also, the college education way. You can also become a project engineer or assistant project manager after going through school, getting a degree in some sort of engineering or project management type degree, and you could get your foot in the door that way. But I think the most important thing to some of the younger audiences, the most important thing is your attitude and your willingness to continue your education, no matter where you are in life. And I feel as long as you have that, attribute, you could go anywhere you want. You could become a PM, you could become an executive, a director of construction, if you like. It's just a drive behind those individuals.
And sort of a wrap-up question for you. I know, when I've spoken to young people and they're, picking their classes for high school, or, they're deciding what they want to do with their career, a big portion for them of their interest comes from the lifestyle that the occupation or the career will help them attain. So, what are some of the more rewarding aspects in terms of lifestyle benefits, vacation time, all of that included that you receive from Shapiro and Duncan?
I think one of the best parts of working at Shapiro and Duncan is the work-life balance. My employer, Shapiro and Duncan, understands that a lot of us, if not pretty much all of us, are more than a project manager, a welder, or a plumber, or whatever your title may be. That a lot of us are fathers, mothers, brothers, sisters, sons, and daughters. And we all have different responsibilities, even outside of work. And they allow us to juggle these different jobs, if you will, and to be able to balance it with our actual work, like our actual occupations. That's one of the biggest benefits. We obviously have a very competitive pay package compared to some of the other companies in the industry, and our overall benefit package is pretty good as well.
If there was one lasting thing you would want to tell young people who are just considering, entering the built environment, what would you say?
I would say, give it a shot. There is, I don't think college is all is made, that people make it sound to be. It's, I feel that building and watching something from nothing become like a relatively large building is very rewarding to me. And I feel that a lot of young people still, like I mentioned earlier, that a lot of people still have that stigma of blue collars being like a dirty job. I just don't find that to be true. I think working with your hands can be one of the most rewarding things. Like, you ever paint a room and you take a step back and say, wow, I put that together. It's the same feeling when you go build a building. So I would highly recommend it to younger audiences that's listening to this.
Excellent. Well, we certainly appreciate your time, Paul. Wish you all the best.
No problem, man. I appreciate this opportunity.
If you want to learn more about Build Your Path podcasts or the built environment overall, go ahead and visit buildyourpath.org. Another big thank you to our guest, Paul Say, from Shapiro and Duncan. Once again, this episode was brought to you by Shapiro and Duncan. Build the lifestyle you deserve. Build Your Path podcasts are produced by the Maryland Center for Construction, Education, and Innovation. I'm Matt Pine. Thank you so much for listening, and we'll talk to you soon.